Hey everybody, if you have a Soundcraft UI24 and you've been wondering how to connect it to Pro Tools so that you can multi-track, I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Let's go! Okay, before we actually get started, I want to say this. The way that the Soundcraft UI24 handles its USB sends from the mixer to your computer is a little bit different than how other mixers in this price bracket do things. So if you're not super comfortable with how these things work, or if you're not super familiar with audio sort of in general, I'm going to suggest you watch our other video where we go in depth on what the USB sends are, what they're set aside for, and how to use it in conjunction with your DAW. Once you watch that video, come on back and check out this video. It'll probably make a lot more sense as we go through it. If you're choosing to move ahead anyway, or if you've just come back from watching the other video, I'll say that I'm not going to go super in depth on how the mixer is set up the way I did in the suggested video. I'm just going to do the basics you need to get it working with your DAW, and then of course I'm going to talk about getting your DAW set up to send and receive signal. Okay, because this is Windows, the first thing we have to do is actually install a USB driver. To get that driver, you're going to open up your browser and you're going to go to soundcraft.com. Then you're going to click on the support tab, go to downloads, view by product, scroll down until you see the UI24R. And then in this panel over here, you are going to look for the multi-channel USB audio driver setup. Download this file and get it installed. Once you do that, on to the next step. So now let's jump right into the mixer. The first thing we need to do is tell the mixer where to look for any information that's coming back from your DAW into your mixer. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can click on each individual channel in your mixer window, go up to the edit button, click on the patching tab, and then click on the USB DAW tab. And then you can choose any slot you want. You do not have to put slot 1 on channel 1. You do not have to put slot 2 on channel 2. If you want to move things further down the line on your channel strips, you can do that. In this case, I'm going to tell channel strip 1 to look on slot 1. And I'm going to click down here on channel 2 and tell it to look under slot 2. And now if I go back to this main window, you can see that down at the bottom of channel 1 and channel 2, it says underneath the fader, DAW 1 and DAW 2. So I know just by looking at it that anything coming out of output 1 and output 2 from my software coming back to the mixer, those are going to show up on these two channel strips. So that's the slow way to do it. The quick way you can do it is to come up and click on the cog, come over to your patching tab, click on USB DAW 1 to 16, and then you can actually click through it like this. The other thing you can do is just hit patch 1 to 1. If I hit this button, it will patch all of my channels, 1 to 16 and 17 to 32 that are coming back from the software onto the channel strips 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 32. So let's click on that just to watch what happens. Do I want to do it? Okay, yes. And you can see now that the first 16 channels have been patched. And if I click on this button, you can see the remaining channels have been patched. So let's jump back to the mixer. And now you can see, of course, each channel at the bottom is showing that it is getting its signal from the DAW returns. So this is great in getting it set up to receive. What do we have to do to get it to send signal out to our software? We don't actually have to do anything. All of our channels are automatically going out over USB to our software. The thing you have to remember, and it's very important, channel 1 going out of your mixer is not going to show up at input 1 on your software. It's actually going to show up at channel 11. So channel 1 is actually channel 11 in your software, channel 2 is actually channel 12 in your software, and so on, up the line. The reason for this is that the first 10 channels leaving your mixer on USB are set aside for your main bus and your aux buses. So channel 1 and 2 are holding the left and right from your master bus, and then 3 through 10 are holding the signal from your aux1 through aux8. This means that you can send signal through your main left-right mix. If you have a mix going, you want that full mix to be captured in your software as well. You can set a couple of channels in your software to receive on channel 1 and 2, and you'll get anything that's showing up on your master bus. And then of course 3 through 10, the same thing. Anything you send into your auxes 1 through 8 will now show up on channels 3 through 10 on your software. So when you really think about it, all you're doing is adding 10 to whatever channel you want to pull in on your software. If you have a microphone plugged into the physical channel number 1 on your mixer, you're going to tell the software to look on channel 11. So you've added 10. And if you plug a microphone or an instrument into the physical input channel 2, add 10, that's 12. So you're going to tell your software to look on channel 12 to get anything that's plugged into channel 2. And your physical inputs 1 through 22, they are hard-coded to the numbers that I've just said. So 1 is 11, 2 is 12, 3 is 13, and all the way up the line. Those numbers are what they are, and you cannot change them. Okay, so that's great. We have our head wrapped around that a little bit, I hope. But looking at this mixer window here for the Soundcraft, you're going to see that, okay, we've got all of our input channels here set to be information coming back from our recording software. What if I have a microphone that I want to plug in and use it and send to the software? Well, we need to set up a channel to do that too. So let's take our channel 1 here and let's change its input to be local 1. So I have a microphone plugged in to 1. I'm going to bring that microphone over. Check, check, check. You can see there's a little bit of blue signal here. Let's actually click gain. Let's bring this up. And now we've got some more signal. And if I bring this up, we're going to see that we've got green signal, meaning the channel is active. And we're seeing it on our master bus as well, on our main fader for left and right. If I pull this up a little bit more, we're going to hear it show up on the speakers in my room. You can hear it getting louder, hear it getting quieter. So we have signal here coming in from our microphone, and the rest of our channels are set to returns from the software. Obviously, if you have more than one microphone or instrument that you want to use and send to your software, you just have to tell more channels where to look. So if I had another 2 microphones and I wanted them on channel strip 2 and 3, I would click on channel strip 2, click edit, local 2, then click down here on 3, local 3. And now if we look, the channel strips have lost their indicator for being DAW. They are now just the regular physical inputs on your mixer. So really quickly, if I take my microphone out of channel 1 and plug that into channel 2, you can now see I've got signal on channel 2. Check, 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 check. Let's bring this up just a bit. Can we hear it? Yes, we can. And same thing, if we take it out of 2 and plug it into 3 and do the same thing. Let's bring our gain up and bring this up. Check, 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 check. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. There you go. So that's how you set inputs for physical inputs and how you set returns coming from your software. Obviously, the next thing to do is look at our recording software and see how we set that up. Okay, let's jump into Pro Tools. So the first thing you're going to want to do is ignore this session window. We can close this for now because you want to come up to Setup and go into Playback Engine. This is where we're going to tell Pro Tools what device to use for input and output. In Playback Engine, it should say Soundcraft. If it doesn't, open up the drop down and make sure you choose it. If you're not seeing Soundcraft in here, but you have installed the USB driver, then do a restart of Pro Tools and hopefully it shows up. If it doesn't, try restarting your whole machine. If that doesn't work, you can try a reinstall of the USB driver. Once we have our playback engine set to Soundcraft, we can click OK. Then we want to go back to setup and go to I/O. This is where we're going to tell Pro Tools which inputs and outputs we want to use. So we can see here there's already inputs and outputs assigned by default. This is what Pro Tools is reading based on the information coming over the USB cable. These are all set. If we look in input, they're all set as stereo pairs. So 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, and so on. If you want to work that way, by all means, you can. You can select mono channels on the actual channel strips once you're into Pro Tools. But if you want to make it easier for yourself, this is what I do. I will select all of these, hit delete path, then I'll click new path and tell it how many new channels I want to create, and I'll make them mono instead of stereo. So we know that our channels coming from the mixer into Pro Tools, they actually start on 11 if you are not going to use the first 10, which are your main, left, right, and your auxes 1 through 8. If you don't intend on using those and you only want to use the physical inputs on the front of the mixer, then it's going to start at 11 and it's going to go to 32. So I'm going to do 22 channels and leave it at mono and hit create. So that gives us 1 to 22. And you can see that it actually auto routed everything, and that's not what we want. So we can go through and we can delete each one, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete these again and I'm going to hit new path. Same thing, I want 22 mono channels, but this button right here, add default channel assignments, unselect it and then hit create. So now it's created our 22 channels, but it hasn't auto-routed anything. So now what we can do is do that ourselves. We can start at 11 and then 12, 13, 14, all the way through until we have our actual 22 channel inputs routed correctly. And now they start at 11. If you want to further make it easier for yourself so that you're not calling input 11 from the mixer input 1 in the software, you can actually come in here and change the name to input 11, input 12, input 13, input 14, and so on, all the way down the line, just to make it easy to keep track of what you're doing. So that's the input side done. Let's look at the outputs. Again, it's done them in stereo, and it's done 1 through 32. So if you want it in stereo, then you're good to go. You can just go into the software and start working. Once again, I like to have everything mono. So I'm going to select all these, delete them, new path, and I'm going to do, you know what, I'm going to do 22 again. The USB will bring back 32 channels, but you only have 22 channel strips in the mixer that you can actually assign these returns to. So if you want to leave the 23 to 32 in there so you can send extra information somewhere, just remember that you won't be able to bring it up at the same time on the mixer as your first 22. You would have to change a channel strip in the mixer from one of the first 22 channels to your next set of channels between 23 and 32 if you want to see that information. So I don't intend on doing that. I'm just going to create 22 mono outputs. This time I can click add default because it will set them from 1 to 22. And that's actually what they are coming back into the mixer. So if I hit create, it's made our 22 output channels and it has auto assigned them as mono channels. And that's what I want. So once you've done all that, you can click OK. And now we can actually create a session. So I'm going to hit Control N, bring up a new session. I'll just call this test session. We're not going to talk through any of these settings. These are all things you need to figure out based on your session setup. I'm just going to leave everything as it is and click create. So here we have an empty session. So the next thing we need to do is create some channels. Shift Control N, or come up to track and click new. Opens up this window. We're going to keep it simple. We're just going to do 3 mono tracks, 3 mono audio tracks, and click create. So now we have 3 tracks. And what we want to do is make sure that our inputs and outputs on the channel strips are correct. So normally, if we have 3 channels, we're probably going to want the inputs set as 1, 2, 3, or in this case, 11, 12, 13. So let's look here, 11, 12, 13. Because I built 3 channels at a time, it started it at 11 and then went up by single-digit increments for each new channel. Outputs are not assigned. This is where you assign your output. Click here, click Output, and then choose your output that you want. So let's do 1, let's do 2, and let's do 3. Now you'll see I have a bunch of other devices listed here. If your screen doesn't match, that doesn't matter. Just use the ones that you know you assigned in the output. So there we go. We have inputs and outputs assigned. So technically, if I pull over my microphone, we should be able to get signal going. Now we're not seeing it, but that is because we have not turned on the record enable function for the first, second, or third channel. Our microphone is in input 1, so we know that's 11, so our first channel strip is looking in the right place. Let's turn on record, and now you can see we've got signal in the software. So if I do a test record right now, check 1, 2. This is me recording with this microphone. Now we are going to test for playback. So look, I've got a waveform there. That's great. Oops. Turn this on so we can zoom in. Okay. Now if I turn this off, we're not getting any new signal in, but we should be able to play this back and have it come up in our mixer. So let's try that. Uh-oh, we're not. How come? Well, that's because we didn't actually set any channels in our mixer software to pull in anything coming back on DAW1. We did originally, but we changed things. So let's jump back in here. You can see channel strip 1, 2, and 3 are actually set to be physical inputs 1, 2, and 3. We know that because there's no designation down here saying otherwise. But channel 4 and up are all set to DAW4 and up. So let's take 4 and we're going to turn this into slot 1. So we'll go to Edit, USB DAW, and change it from slot 4 to slot 1. Now let's go over to 5, change that to 2, go over to 6, and change it to 3. So now these 3 channel strips are all looking for information to come back on the 3 output channels that we set in Pro Tools. So right now, if I hit play again on this little snippet that I recorded, we should be able to hear it coming through our speakers. Check 1, 2. This is me recording with this microphone. Now we are going to test for playback. Great, so that worked. Really quickly, let's change our microphone from input 1 to input 2. And then in Pro Tools, we are going to set this to record enable on the second channel strip. Now I'm going to mute this one so I don't hear it. And let's do another quick test record. Check, check, check. Mic 2. Check mic 2. Okay, so we have a much smaller waveform. Why is that? Well, if we come back over here and look at our gain is down on channel 2 in comparison to where it was on channel 1. But it doesn't matter. We got signal in there. Just be aware of your gain settings. Whatever gain you set in the mixer software is what will affect the amount of signal coming into your DAW. So if I turn this off and I hit play, check, 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 mic 2, check, mic 2. Do that again. Check, 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 mic 2. There it is. Check, mic 2. Okay, so we know that that's going in and it's coming back. Let's do one more. Change it from microphone input 2 to microphone input 3. Let's record enable on channel strip 3. I'm actually going to turn the gain up here on this one. You can hear it starting to come back already through my speakers. And now let's hit record. Mic 2. Oops. Check. Let's mute that so we don't hear it. And record. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. This is microphone 3. Check on microphone 3. Okay. So there, again, we have a smaller waveform. We did adjust the gain, but we're not quite as high, and I wasn't speaking directly into the microphone. I pushed it a little bit at the end so you can see the waveform actually goes up in amplitude. So now, if I'm going to unmute these, and I'm going to pull these channel strips down, and I'm just going to loop play this. Oh, it's already set to loop, so let's just do it there. Now let's hit play. Let's bring up the first one with this microphone. There it is. Bring up the second one. Check, check, check. Mic 2. There it is. Bring up the third one. 3, check on mic. There it is. It's that simple. There you go. Signal from our mixer to our DAW, signal from our DAW back to our mixer. I know it was a little bit complicated, and if you made it all the way here and you're still not really sure what was going on, I'm going to recommend you watch our other video where we go in depth on how the USB sends are handled by this mixer, what those certain sends are set aside for, and it'll probably make a lot more sense. Anyway, with all that aside, I hope this video was interesting, entertaining, educational. If it was any of those three things, please like, share, subscribe, and of course you can check us out on Patreon, or you can do a super thanks down below, or even join this channel down below, and that helps us to grow our channel. Anyway, until we see you next time, thanks for watching here on Quick and Easy Quickies. Bye.